the Hidden Community Project for the Berkshire County Historical Society. The date is March 12th, 1998, in the home of Wray, Gunn. This is tape number 1. Interviewer is Zeb Pine. Okay, we're rolling. Were you born here in?
No, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh. And when did you come here?
I think my family moved into the Berkshire County area back in about 1938. We moved into October Mountain in Lee.
Okay, so you came here in 38. How old were you?
I was 8 years old when we came up here from Henderson, North Carolina. That's where my family was living then, and I came up here as a young boy.
Okay, and then your family was returning here from?
Yeah, my family on my father's side has its roots in Stockbridge, Mass, where they lived on East Main Street for many years. They can trace my roots back into the 1700s.
Ooh.
In fact, in the Stockbridge Library.
You want to go over briefly what that is?
I don't really have the facts down perfect. I do have a historian right here with me who could probably give you the facts a lot better than me.
Well, maybe we can come back and interview Mrs. Gunn.
Yeah.
So what was it like coming back or arriving for you as a child of 8?
Oh, let's see. We were living on the mountain in Lee, and we were attending, or at least I was attending, the Lee Central School. This was grade 6 and 7. And as far as being in school at that time, there were my 2 brothers and myself going to Lee, and there was one other black family attending schools at that time, and that was Fowler. The Fowlers, and they lived in Stockbridge also. Well, they lived on the line between Stockbridge and Lee. And we used to go to school together over in Lee. And believe it or not, I had one brother, my middle brother, his name was St. Clair. He was a guy that was into everything. He was in a fight a day. He was in a fight a day, and he loved it. He just had to have that contact. And a lot of the time, some of the fights he had was with the Fowler boy, which was unusual, because there weren't too many black families around at that time. But as far as my schooling went, it went okay. I was in the top portion of the class. I was very shy and quiet. I just did my work, didn't do anything outside of that. And coming from a southern school to a northern school, people thought that I should probably be put back a class. But we weren't put back a class. We went into the classes we were supposed to. It took us about a week to get adjusted, but we seemed to have held our own in the classrooms.
You were in a segregated school in the South?
In the South, oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what was that like for you, coming up here and being in integrated school?
It was intimidating, something that we weren't accustomed to. But it wasn't totally a new reality for us, because back in Henderson, North Carolina, where we lived, the family lived, we lived on a street that was next to a cotton gin and a tobacco warehouse. and on the corner there was a black funeral parlor, and we were the second house on the street, and the first house on the street was a white family. This was in Henderson, North Carolina, back in the 30s, and the kids in the white family, and me and my brothers, and the kid from the funeral parlor, whose name was Walter Eugene Jordan. We had our own little gang, or we all played together. And my brother St. Clair was head of the gang. He sort of ordered us all around. And so when we came up here, we had already had contact with white families, but not in schools. We used to go to the movies on Saturday, and the two white kids would get their 10 cents. We'd travel over the railroad tracks and get up our dime a piece by picking up metal spikes, selling the iron, so that we can make that 10 cent. We'd go to the movies on Saturday afternoon and watch the serials. And there were two boys in the white family. They would go to the movies, and they'd come upstairs, and we'd all sit upstairs in the balcony right next to the dividing line there, and stay all afternoon on that 10 cents. Very nice. So when we moved up here, we'd already had contact with white families, and it was just a matter, as my brother Saint always put it, it's just a matter of letting them know that you weren't going to be run over. And he never let anybody run over him, you know. In fact, he went out of his way to let you know that you weren't going to run over him. Too bad he never played football. Would have been great. Yeah. So I think we took that change in stride, and just acted like normal people. And my brother played sports at Lee. He was in high school. My brother David, who lives in Stockbridge now, he played sports at Lee High School. He was I guess he was the first black athlete they had there, but he was a standout in basketball. And my brother Saint and I, we played sports at Williams High School in Stockbridge, and my brother Saint was an outstanding basketball player and baseball player. In fact, he was a natural at whatever he did. And then I just came along in the rear, played. I was the smallest, but I'd say overall we made out pretty good.
So you didn't have any problems making friends up here?
Oh, I can't say that. We had problems in making some friends, but you either made a friend or you didn't make a friend. I mean, you just gave it the first shot. If it was going to be a friendly association, you went with it. If it wasn't, forgot about it. We didn't really go out of our way to try and make somebody be a friend of ours, no. In fact, as far as my brother, if my brother David and my brother Saint were together, it was a different story. They would not let these things pass. Anything that would be considered as you putting them down, they would let you know that that wasn't the way it was going to be. The two of them together. Yeah. And they were always my protectors too. So
You're the youngest?
I'm the youngest. Yeah. So they took care of me, and they loved doing that. Yeah.
What brought your family? Did your parents move from here to North Carolina?
My dad was born in Stockbridge, Mass.
Mm-hmm.
His name was David L. Gunn, Sr. And we have our roots in Stockbridge going way back. So he was one of a large family that grew up on East Main Street in Stockbridge. And of course he went south to get an education. He went to Tuskegee Institute, and he went to Hampton Institute, where he met my mother, whose name was Sinclair Hicks, and they were married. They were married up here in Hillsdale, New York. My mother had a job up here, summer job, and they were married in Hillsdale, New York, by justice of the peace back in 1926. But that was when they first graduated from college, and then they went back to get degrees, and but my father's sister, whose name was Maud Van Allen, had married a gentleman who ran a rubbish disposal business in Lenox, Mass. And so he became ill, and she wanted someone to run the business. They used, while my father was in school, they used some of the other relatives that were up here in New England. And finally, when Dad got out of school and he'd settled down a little bit, he decided to come back up and run the business for my aunt, his sister, Maud. And so that's when we moved back up here. And she owned the house in Lee, and so we moved there. Right. So we didn't go into Dad and Mother didn't purchase a house in Stockbridge until, I believe it was 1940. I'm not sure the year. And that house is still in Stockbridge. We still own it. Well, I own it. It's at 2 East Street in Stockbridge. Not the homestead, which was on East Main Street. But anyway, he came back up. He brought the family back up so that he could run my aunt's garbage business in Lenox, and that's what he did.
What did they do in North Carolina, Henderson?
My father was he was a chef. I can remember that he did a lot of cooking. He traveled around from camp to camp. Some of the other jobs he had down there, that was camp to camp in the summertime. He was also a principal. He was in the education system down there. And he used to be a principal in can't remember the name of the town. Maybe I'll think of it. But he used to be a principal, and he used to be a coach, and he used to be a teacher down in different towns down in North Carolina. He used to teach at Benedict College also in Columbia, South Carolina. And so we sort of moved around a little bit down there. And I can't remember all the places we went to or stayed in. Of course, my mother had 2 aunts down there that were very good to her. They were her sisters, Belle and Katie, and they sort of helped my folks out and watching the kids while they worked. I'm not sure what work my mother did during those years.
And then when you came up here, you lived with your aunt for a while?
Yes, we lived with my aunt for about 2 or 3 years until, with the help of my aunt, they were able to purchase this home in Stockbridge.
Mm-hmm.
And we've owned that since about 1940. I don't know where I might have those papers somewhere. I'll have to look them up and see.
Okay.
So.
And you lived with both your parents and your 2 brothers? Was that the extent of your family after you moved to Stockbridge?
Yes. My brothers were David and St. Clair, and myself, David Jr.
And where are they now?
Well, David is still in Stockbridge. on East Main Street. My brother St. Clair is in Washington, D.C. With his own family.
Mm-hmm. And then, when did you marry? Or what happened to you? You went to Lee High School?
I went to Lee High School. No, I went to Lee Central School. And when I sort of like graduated out of Central School, for 1 year I did the bus trip back and forth to Lee from Stockbridge to finish out that year. And then the next year I was a freshman at Williams High School in Stockbridge because we were there. And so then I started, that was back in 44, 1944. Then I was a freshman at Williams High School. Then my marks were always good. I was in the top 5 of the class each year while at Williams High School. I had quite a few honors. I was president of the class several years. I was treasurer. I was student council representative. I was editor of the newspaper. Then, being on the student council, I was president of the state student councils of high school in Massachusetts, and I had to preside over meetings that were held in different cities, towns. That was in my senior year, and I won the school oratorical contest, and I was number 1 on that. And then they had a statewide oratorical contest, and I came in 3rd. I was one of the speakers at my graduation. I wasn't first or second, but I was chosen to give a special speech at graduation. So I did that. Quite a few honors. They just came to me, I guess. I was in the right place, right time. That was about
it. And what year did you graduate?
1948.
And then what?
Then I went to, well, in 1948 when I graduated, my brothers and I, we went up to a tryout school, one of these baseball tryout schools. No, we went up to one of those in Port Henry, New York. My brother St. Clair had been invited up there, so we all jumped into his convertible and we rode up there, and we were going to spend the weekend and try out. And while we were up there, we all played and tried out. And it just so happens they wanted to offer me a contract to play Class D ball and Class D baseball for St. Louis Browns. And I had to make my choice whether or not I wanted to do that or go to school, so I decided to go to school. Because I had been accepted at UMass. And that's what I did. I went to UMass for 4 years and graduated with a degree in chemistry and minors in physics and math.
Yeah. And so you graduated in 52?
1952.
What did you do after that, after graduation?
Well, I got married in September 13th in 52 to a lady from Pittsfield. Her name was Dolores Oakley family. And on June 22nd, 1952, I got a job with New England Lime Company in Canaan, Connecticut. as a lab technician.
That was New England Lime?
New England, NELCO, New England Lime Company,
Hmm.
down in Canaan, Connecticut. And that name changed from New England Lime Co. to NELCO, N-E-L-C-O, capital letters, NELCO Incorporated. And it changed to NELCO Incorporated when the U.S. government came in and put them under contract to produce calcium metal, which was high priority material for the United States government used in the Manhattan Project.
Oh.
Yeah. So we all had to get clearance and all that sort of stuff.
And what did you do for them?
I was a chemist,
Oh, you were chemist.
lab tech. In fact, at the time I went in, I was the chemist at the plant was sick, and later turned out to be tuberculosis, and he died. So I never really met him. No. So when I went in the lab, there was nobody there. So I just went in, and they said, "Here's the lab. You know, there's some tests you have to do." And it was kind of scary in the beginning because I didn't have a mentor. You know, somebody was saying, "This is how we run the tests, and this is what we do," and just go in. And so I guess I handled that all right. I stayed there for 44 years.
Oh.
Just retired completely here about a year and a half ago.
Oh.
Yeah, 2 years this fall. So I had to. So it was first.
So you continued working as a chemist for them before?
Oh yes, they offered me three other positions, which I turned down after I looked at them. One was to be chief chemist at a plant in California, in Apple Valley. That plant has since shut down. Then there was to be quality assurance manager at a plant in Ohio, and that one is shut down. And then I had a chance to go to Victorville, and that one has since turned down. I turned them all down because I didn't like the area, and I'm sort of glad I did. I liked where I was and the job I was doing. Yeah, but I went from lab tech. My chemist died, so they made me chemist, and they moved me up to chief chemist. And then back in 1962, Pfizer bought the plant out. When Pfizer bought us out, then they had a different level of organization. So I was made chief chemist. Then I was moved up to quality assurance personnel, then quality assurance manager. And that's what I retired as, quality assurance manager, which was a nice job. I liked it.
Have you been in what way have you been involved in the community?
In the community?
Here, yeah. Has there been church involvement?
Oh yes, I belonged to the Clinton AME Zion Church in Great Barrington. Clinton AME Zion Church in Great Barrington, located on Elm Court.
Mm-hmm.
I've held, in my 10-year time, I have held all the offices except being minister. So somewhere along the line, chairman of all the boards, been on all the boards, choir, and let's see, what else? I used to be on the Board of Antidiscrimination here in Berkshire County, and I used to be heavily involved in the NAACP branch out of Pittsfield for Berkshire County. I used to be on the Mental Health Board, Berkshire County. And I've been a member of the local Lions Club, Great Barrington Lions Club, since I've been on that for about 25 years now. And I've also been on the Sheffield Planning Board. I'm now running for my fourth term, which is interesting.
How so?
Yeah,
How is it interesting?
because we're trying to get in some new zoning regulations, rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And where we're running into a lot of problems is trying to satisfy those people that have either lots or want to use lots that were non-conforming last year. Were non-conforming many years ago, and now they want to do something else with them. We have a lot of interesting cases coming up before the board. And we only put in the new zoning bylaws about 2 years ago. And that's been tested quite a few times. So the Board of Appeals has had work to do too. Yeah. And right now, one of the things we have to address is people as they get elderly and they find that being elderly, some of them want to come back and live with their siblings in their house with them. And our laws permit that as long as you don't make a separate unit in the house for them. And you can do most anything as long as you don't put in a second kitchen. And that's where the stickler is. We have regular rules governing that. So now there's a petition out to put something on the docket, the next town meeting, whereby there can be a new ruling for this. It's up to the people, whatever they want. I mean, I don't really have anything to do with it, but listen to the pros and cons and then make an honest opinion of what I think. So that's where we are right now.
So what is your interest as far as how you make your decisions? For instance, in the matter of making a separate unit.
It's too early for me to say. I haven't heard all the pros and cons yet. I mean, that's my job, to listen. They want to do it, they come in and they tell us what they want. They write up the bylaw that they would like to see presented, and then we evaluate that. We've got a hearing. Yeah. No, we don't have a hearing set on this one yet, but because the wording wasn't proper on the initial petition that came in.
I guess what I wanted to ask was, how do you make your decisions? How do you weigh the information that you're given? So that
Well, it's hard to say. It depends on. That's why you have hearings. You go to the hearings, and you sit back and listen to get what the people are talking about. Now, the one thing you have to keep in mind is, basically, you can't deny people from doing things. Basically. You have to go through and look at all the laws and make sure no laws are being broken. Now, in order to do this thing that they want to do now, there are other laws on the books that say you can't do it. So right now, if their wording does not take into effect the other laws that say you can't do it, then we have to consider that, or at least I have to consider that.
So it's part of your job on the planning board is to protect community interest. Is that accurate to say that?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. So what do you see as the community's interest?
I say they want to have it done, but they need to write the pros and cons up, and then we go through and see if the pros outweigh the cons, as far as I can see. That's about all I can tell you now, because we haven't gone into it that much.
Okay.
We had a long meeting the other night, and that was about the gist of it. but basically it wasn't worded properly.
Going back to when you were growing up here, do you have any memories of
Church picnics?
or
Sure, we used to have church picnics. We used to have church picnics. We used to have church dinners. We used to have church affairs where we tried to get the community to come in and help us. We had fundraisers at the church. Things that I can remember vividly. Things that I was in quite deeply. I remember starting a building fund at the church, whereby what I wanted to get the people to do was to take the church and expand it, make it bigger, because the church has got a cellar that always gets wet. So I wanted to expand the church and expand it out to the sidewalk, which if you got a variance you could do. And the project looked like a real big one for such a small church, but it would have given them access to bringing the bathrooms upstairs and giving them a sizable meeting room upstairs, because most of the members of the church are elderly, and it's kind of difficult to maneuver on steps and things like that. Some people follow. But then we got a minister in there that didn't want to be patient to raise the money so that we could do the whole job, and so they used the money for some other things, and I didn't particularly go along with that. In fact, I kept voting against it, and then pretty soon, in fact, we had the support of the town too, because I made speeches at different churches, to try to get them, bring them in, and I was upset with that. And then they got a new minister in there, and he told me I didn't have any control on that, and I was doing too much, so I left that time. Yeah. I said, okay, do it.
So was that the church you were involved with when you were growing up?
Up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Family's always been associated with the church. My mother was a churchgoer, and we went to church even when we were down south. We went to church every Sunday. Yeah. But other things, in the Lions Club, I'm president and treasurer, and I try to run projects. I've held an office for about all my 25 years, except, say, the first 3. I've either been president or secretary or treasurer all the time. And basically my main interest there is seeing that the club runs and makes some money so that we can help out people that are near and care for their eyes. We supply glasses, eye care. Now we've moved into the area of hearing aids, things like that. And it's stimulating to do these things that help people out. I like that.
When you were growing up, did anything noteworthy, anything stick out in your memory? Big snowstorms?
Oh, sure.
Floods?
Storms aren't like they are now. In fact, just speaking of floods, just the other day I was looking at some old pictures I had back, the flood in Stockbridge, Mass. Back in 1949. I have some pictures of those, and it shows the water. I took pictures in certain areas on the water covering the golf course in Stockbridge and covering the railroad station in Stockbridge, and by covering I mean up to the windows, and of the old homestead in Stockbridge having the water completely fill the back lot. Fires, had a big fire at a lumber company down on East Main Street just before you get to South Lee there. Big fire back in about 1950. I took a couple of pictures of those. I don't know where those pictures are. But this lumber yard burned down, took all day. I mean, the fire department could do nothing with it because of the lumber and timber that were burning. Yeah.
So the flood in '49 reached to your house?
The one, yeah.
So you looked out and you saw all this water in your backyard. How did that affect your family's life? Or did you...
Well, that was where my aunt was living, not our house. Our house is on East Street. This is East Main Street. East Street, as you come out of Stockbridge, goes up towards Pittsfield, towards Lenox. Route 7, that's East Street. East Main Street continues on towards South Lee and the Pike. So they were actually sort of like stymied there. They were isolated for a little bit, but not too long, because it didn't stay at that level too long. Yeah. What are some of the other things standing out?
Yeah. They don't have to be disasters, just like I said, picnics or...
Well, let's see, I got
gatherings.
married in '52, had a problem finding a place to live, because nobody wanted to rent to me. You know, one of these things, you could call it discrimination if you like. Couldn't get a rental.
Where did you try to get rental?
Locally, Berkshire County.
Around in the Stockbridge,
Great Barrington
Great
area.
Barrington area?
Yeah, I'd call about a place, and then I'd go look at it, and then after I looked at it, and then called back, it was either already taken or someone had put a down payment on it or something like that, you know, one of these suspicious, like, answers.
How did you feel about that?
Upset. Yes. That wasn't good at all. But at that time, that was happening quite a bit. And you couldn't prove anything. That was it. You couldn't really prove anything. And at that particular time, I wasn't on the discrimination board. They weren't that involved with those things at that particular time. They came later on. So there really wasn't too much that we could do. But we finally found this place. Bought this place, moved in here in 1953. Yeah. January 1st, 1953. And done a lot of work on it, renovated it quite a bit.
Was that the first time you'd run into overt discrimination in looking for housing?
No, there were other little subtle things that happened. I can't remember all of them. Like being not waited on in restaurants, go out to eat, and you wonder why it took so long to get waited on. That was one thing. Being bypassed in line for, this didn't really happen to me, but it happened to one of my sons, being bypassed in his effort to do a job, you know, a little job. That was upsetting. Things like that. There were probably quite a few others I don't recall right now. I really like to forget them. I don't harbor the grudge if we're making progress anywhere along the line. Keep bringing those things up again and again and again. It doesn't help. Doesn't help you to move forward, I feel. You got to work with and deal with people. And some people are going to have the type of feeling they've got forever. So you have to find a way to work with them.
How would you describe the values that your parents gave you as you were growing up?
Well, my mother always said, don't expect people to get something for nothing. And everybody should go out and work and make an honest dollar. My mother was always hardworking, and my father was always hardworking. And she said, go out first and then have a good time. And they both like to travel, entertain, and I always felt that way. If I wanted something, first of all, have the money to buy it, and don't expect someone to just give you the money. Go out there and earn it. So I've worked all my life. My brothers have worked all their lives. They've all had a job as long as I can remember. Now, whether or not you live a lifestyle that's within your means, that might be a different story, which is a problem quite a few people have. But my mother and father were always outgoing, friendly with people. I try to be the same way. I try not to judge a person by hearsay and all this other stuff. I have to meet them and talk with them. In fact, I might even like a person that nobody else likes. That's just me, though. I can't say that's my mother used to be the same. My mother and father were the same way. When we were living in Stockbridge there, we made more friends because when a new black family came into town, my mother and father were the first people to visit them. I don't know how they found out so much about who was coming in, but there are a lot of black families coming in every summer to work. And my mother and father always had those people over to the house or something, right off the bat. And she made a lot of friends that way. And even today, people are asking me about Mrs. Gunn. You're talking about Mrs. Gunn, Mr. Gunn, which is just a great legacy, I think. They were outstanding people. And I try to be the same way. My brother, David, is the same way, but he just doesn't get out. He doesn't get out to get involved. But when he meets people, he's a friendly person and give you the shirt off his back. Yeah. So my brother Saint. So we're good that way. So we learned from my folks to be that type person. Yeah. And I appreciate it.
So you're very community-oriented.
Quite so.
And did you pass that along to your children?
I tried to, but all four of them are different. It's tough to know really what you passed on to your children because they all didn't turn out the same. So I'm just hoping that basically good things were passed on to them. I can't. Even to this day, I'm not sure what all got passed on. Mm-hmm. I can't answer that one.
Kind of out of our control.
Once they walk out that door.
Now, what kind of discipline did your parents use with you?
My mother was a disciplinarian. She dealt out the punishment, and she tried to be strict, but of course that didn't work.
Why didn't it work?
Because My two brothers were always getting spankings, so I don't believe it worked all that well. If it was working, she wouldn't have had to give that many spankings. But spankings were when you knew you were going to get a spanking and you knew who was going to give it. And when you got ready to go to bed, you knew how to prepare yourself. First of all, you had to go out and get a switch for your own spanking. And then later on, after you got ready for bed, you got in your pajamas, Ma comes in and she does the dirty work. She, take off your bottoms, and then she'd clamp your head between her knees and she'd let you have a few whacks.
And how did you discipline your children then?
I tried to give them a spanking when they were supposed to, and I tried to talk to them when I thought that they were wrong. But that was only in the early days. Most of the time I chastised them or punished them some other way, taking something from them. We didn't give beatings after spankings, after they were about 5 or 6. We tried to talk, we tried to explain, and we did other things without physically abusing them. That was about it.
So you changed your method of operation a little bit from what your parents...
Yeah, not unless it was something major and you were present at the moment it happened. Because I can remember being something happening at a store once, like, come on, it's time to go, and the kid pulling away from there, telling me he wasn't going to go and all this, it's the wrong one. So I grabbed him in the store, and I know I gave him a spanking with my hand, which isn't quite as bad, but it's just to let him know that I was boss. Yeah.
And you said your parents had very high work ethics.
Yes.
So I guess you had chores to do?
We had chores to do.
What did you do?
Well, back when we were in the South, of course you didn't need much heat there, but in the wintertime when it got a little bit cool, you did need heat. So I remember we had this big stove right in the middle of the living room. And that stove needed wood every day and had to have the ashes taken out. And we get a bath every Saturday night. Okay? Fill the tub up and all 3 boys would get a bath. I was the first one. I was in the clean water. And if the wood wasn't there, then the heat went down. And since Dad was working and not there all the time, it was up to us to keep going. And since Dad wasn't there too, my mother became very good at doing a lot of things on her own. Like she canned goods, like she made soda pop, she made ice cream. She was really great. But and also the ashes, you had to clean the ashes out of the pan before you made a stove. So if you skipped doing your chore, which is what, I didn't have any heavy chores, not real heavy, but my 2 brothers had to cleaning the ashes out. And sometimes they'd ask me to do it, I remember, and I'd do it. But it seemed like they forgot quite a few times. And it created a little problem for them. So I can remember that quite vividly. Now, once we got up here, we used to live on a sort of like a farm up in Lee, on October Mountain, and we had pigs and chickens. That was the main thing. And so you had to clean the pig pens out, and you had to clean the chicken coop out. And we were all involved in that in the same way. Of course, I was a little older then. I was getting up around 8. And even there, sometimes everything wasn't in proper order. especially during the fall when we killed the pigs. There were certain things we had to do to get ready. And we were all sports minded, so we more or less wanted to go play baseball or go play something else. But up on the mountain, we didn't have that many facilities available. So we were usually home. And so I found that if it were today, it would really be a hard time keeping us there. But back then, it wasn't quite as bad. But we did help out in killing the pigs, and we did help out with the chicken coop.
What was the difference between then and now?
Then and now, living in the town, and there's so much to do at the schools, we'd be off and gone most of the time. Back there, we were on the mountain. The only way to get there was catch the transit bus and then walk that mile and a half to get home. So we weren't.
So I'd be interested to hear what it was like, since I'm the city boy. What was it like you said there was a lot of preparation and things for the slaughtering?
Oh yeah.
What was that like?
Oh yeah. First of all, you had to keep the, since we had the garbage business, we were making out like gangbusters for feeding the pigs, because when we went to markets and picked up the vegetables and stuff they were throwing out, we just brought it home and gave it to the hogs. But the hogs kind of sloppy in eating, so they get all over the pen, so we had to go in and clean them out, okay, so that you could deliver more stuff in. And one of our jobs was to get in and clean it out. We moved the hogs into another pen and clean the old stuff out that they wouldn't eat, probably because it was covered with mud, something like that. And of course, we had a lot of fun there. You know, you fall in and you get all covered with mud and you play in it, and you wrestle in it, you know, and then mother wouldn't let you in the house. And up there on the mountain, we had all sorts of animals running through. We had a garden that was, the animals pilfered the best stuff, woodchucks, foxes. So then we said, well, you know, you gotta protect what you're growing out there. So we sort of had some .22 rifles that we tried to kill the woodchucks with, or whatever came down in there. We weren't too good at that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. We used to collect eggs, and we'd sell them with our chickens. And we kept chickens until one day we had an Irish setter dog, Red. And one day he got in a chicken coop. One night he got in a chicken coop and he killed all the chickens we had. Can't remember how many, but it had to be up in around 30 or so. And he even killed my favorite chicken. I used to have a chicken. I walk in, the chicken would fly to me, you know, and sit on my shoulder, sit on my head, and all this sort of stuff. That dog killed him. Didn't eat them, just killed them. If they moved, he killed them. And they killed them all. So we were going to get rid of the dog. My father was going to shoot him. And he did. The dog was sitting out there, I remember, and Dad got the .22 and went out and shot at him. Missed him 4 times. I couldn't see how he missed a big dog like that 4 times. And then we finally got rid of the dog. I thought he should have shot him with 1. Maybe we could have buried him on the farm. But we didn't. No.
Did you do any work outside the home?
I mean outside.
Did you have part-time jobs or anything?
No. No. We didn't have part-time jobs there. It seemed like we had too much to do on the farm. First of all, my oldest brother was big enough so that he could help Dad on the truck. So he was tied up there. And with everything else going on, we didn't have any part-time jobs there. Help Mother can stuff. We used to make root beer. You know, Ma had the recipe and we made root beer. We'd bottle it and put it down in this root cellar or whatever you want to call it. And she used to make dandelion wine. My mother used to make dandelion wine. But for some unknown reason, it always used to disappear.
Well, it sounds like you knew where it disappeared to.
Well, my second oldest brother had an affinity for drinking, for tasting the wine. He was Ma's wine sampler before it was time. And sometime he'd go in and drain a bottle and then fill it back up with water. And actually, he was the only one that was drinking about that time. And my other brother, he wasn't. That was one of the times that he wasn't actively involved in a problem. Yeah. But even later on in life, when he used to come visit, Ma used to have special bottles of wine from, we called him Saint. Saint, I got something you might like in the refrigerator. And he'd like that. What else?
What do you remember from this area as you were growing up? People that made an impression on you,
My coaches. Coaches in high school. Can't remember all their names. Well, I remember Coach John Consolati in Lee. Coach fellow from Stockbridge, Tracy. J. Murray Tracy. And I remember J. Murray Tracy used to saying, are you going to college? And I said, well, I don't think my folks can afford it. And he said, well, you need to go. And so my junior year, he was my coach, and my senior year, I had another coach. I can't remember his name, but he said I should go, and so he helped me get into UMass. So I owe him a lot. And growing up, a couple of my other teachers, I can't remember their names. But then in some of my community activities, Dr. Gilligan in Great Barrington, he was a family doctor for over 50 years, but I served on several committees with him, and he was very strong, and this is mental health committee. He and I used to go to meetings, and he was very strong, carried a lot of weight. John B. Hull in Great Barrington, owner of the oil company. He and I became involved in setting up Construct Incorporated in Great Barrington, which is the non-profit housing organization. I'm one of the charter members of that, along with John B. and several other people. But we started that and had meetings out at Simon's Rock before it became a school. And Mrs. Hall, Blodgett Hall, founder of Simon's Rock. Reverend Nevers of Pittsfield, he's deceased now. He was a minister at Meredith. He used to be minister at Second Congregational Church. I respected him. Gave me a lot of insight. He was my wife's minister. There are probably some other people I should name, but can't think of them right now.
Well, this has been very helpful.